Okay.
Are we recording? Hello and welcome to the Idiot's Odyssey. I don't know how you got here, but that's your problem now. So this is a podcast where we're going to be covering film and TV news, film reviews, and our reactions to the two. My name is Virgo, and my co-host is...
I'm Owen Murphy. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so I think it's best that we don't bother reviewing any films because we haven't seen any films, have we?
Well, I'm not watching Dumb and Dumber 2.
No, that's just straight up. So we're going to get on with the news, right? Well, the big news is the Sony, after the Sony leak and all of this stuff and the North Korea threats, apparently the interview is going to be back on. What do you think?
I'm glad that Sony isn't going to be cowed by what feels like basically a bunch of 4-year-old boys on the internet, judging by their English. Even if they are 4-year-old boys who are making massive terrorist threats.
I wonder how slightly racist that sounded. English, really? But yeah, but
slightly massively racist.
Yeah, but
I apologise to any non-English speaking people.
That's okay, Berg. But I was thinking.
Please stop hacking Sony.
I was, yeah, they're all responsible, clearly. But I was thinking more that it's good that they're not letting this kind of stuff stand.
Well, I find it more interesting that Sony, they've totally let it stand, and it's kind of been a matter over the past few weeks of whoever is pushing them the hardest is the person they're going to listen to.
Yeah, as in they're only doing this because Obama said, no, you did a bad thing, you're not supposed to cave.
Yeah. I feel like Obama was kind of harsh on them, because, I mean, they're a movie studio, they're not really equipped to deal with terrorist threats. That's not their point.
They can do the special effects, but not actual.
They could deal with Arnold Schwarzenegger, basically. That's their whole purpose. They're here to deal with Arnold Schwarzenegger and fill their gold-plated yachts with cocaine. That's their entire purpose for being.
Gold-plated yachts. I don't know if gold can actually survive that, but okay, that's not really the point. But what do you reckon of this whole thing on IMDb that I think it's got a rating of like 10 right now because of, I think you were saying anonymous.
It could possibly be anonymous. I'm not sure of the source. It probably is.
Well, it's 36,000 right now, I think, last time I checked. Plus.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's just a public reaction. I'd give it a 10 if I was the kind of person who rates films on IMDb. Even though IMDb gave Under the Skin 6.2 and I want no part to do with it, nothing to do with that community.
Well, you can only change it by being a part of it, I suppose. Moving on, and what have you got?
Next up, Ridley Scott launches the cover page of his new film, The Martian, into space. And by new film, I mean film that's going to be coming out next year.
I've heard of The Martian, and mostly because I've been told to listen to it on other podcasts in audiobooks. I'm not going to say anything until someone pays me money.
Well, apparently the deal behind it is this author, Peter Weir. Sorry, not Peter Weir, Andy Weir. Apologies to the real Peter Weir. He wrote his little novel called The Martian. No one would take it up, so he self-published, and then everyone wanted a piece of that because it went straight to the top of Amazon's book sales list. But the more interesting part is where this script cover page is being sent into space, which seems like
cool.
It seems like absolutely perfect proof that once you're a famous film director, people will do whatever stupid bullshit you want them to do.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
But is it supposed to be coming a bit as well?
Martian?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like, it seems really science fiction.
It seems a bit wacky. I think it's supposed to be a bit wacky as well.
I'm only saying, and I don't know anything about Andy Weir, but he was a computer programmer, so my first instinct is to say there aren't going to be that many comedic elements.
Yeah.
But that being said, maybe he's a really funny dude. So again, apologies to the real Andy Weir this time.
I'm very certain people can probably hear me typing.
Yeah, apologies for the typing. And please bear with us, there might be some editing over this part of the podcast.
How about that?
Yep, but if anyone asks, we did everything first take. So, science fiction novel. The story follows an American astronaut, Mark Watney.
Why did I think it was a comedy?
I don't know. Well, it could be like Moon, I suppose, where Moon was it had comedic elements, and that was about a guy who was stuck on the moon on his own, going slightly to massively insane.
Yeah. Anyway,
But moving on from Ridley Scott, just
breaking in
what
the
the
cash.
hell? I really hope this is a publicity stunt, because if this is something that they actually wanted to do just for the sake of it, it seems pretty ridiculous.
What?
Sending a page of the script into space.
Oh yeah, that. Turning your dog its own, yes.
Yeah. The next story is
It's a
President.
bit over the top, doesn't it?
Yeah, Obama he's telling Sony that they've been very naughty boys,
I think
which we already
covered
covered.
that,
Yeah.
I think the Star Trek 3, I think is probably the bigger news of the weekend.
Okay, first off, Star Trek 3 had its director shortlist leak, and it was pretty good. There was Duncan Jones. Actually, that's perfect. We were just talking about Moon, and he did Source Code as well. Both terrific films, well worth checking out. There was Rupert Wyatt, who did the first Planet of the Apes film of the
Oh,
new
yeah.
trilogy, and I can't remember what else he has done, unfortunately.
I got nothing.
I seem to recall it being. He does solid films. I haven't been super impressed, but he's solid. Then there's Martin Tildum, who, if I remember right, is the guy. Martin Tildum, who directed The Imitation Game, which is getting a lot of Oscar buzz
Oh,
right
yeah.
now. Which is what happens when you put Benedict Cumberbatch in your films. Pro tip for any directors out there. There is Daniel Espinosa, who I'm not quite sure what the hell he has done. And then there is candidate number 5, and the guy who actually got the job. This is Justin Lin, who you may know from directing Fast and Furious 6 and 4 and 5, which I listed in order, in ascending order of how good they were. Fast and Furious 4 was not good.
In news of the Walking Dead spin-off series, codenamed Cobalt so far, to be taking place in Los Angeles, setting anyway, and they've just cast Kim Dickens
Yeah.
in was one of the main roles, and the role has been described as, her name is Nancy Tompkins, and she is a guidance counselor. Nancy is described as a 30-something single mom with 2 kids, and looks like the girl next door, but there's an edge to her.
So basically, Nancy Tompkins is any woman ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know,
According to screenwriters.
except for the 2 kids bit, not every woman ever has 2 kids.
Well, yeah.
That's the thing. And there's very little else to be said on that.
Yeah, we're talking bare bones. I mean, at this stage, anything is news, really.
Yeah. Moving on.
Anything regarding that now, because they've been quiet for so long. That's what I meant now.
Yeah. Hopefully they're not being quiet because things are going so horribly.
No,
on
it's
set.
just a slow build, and like they've got time.
Yeah. When's that
um,
coming out again? Do we know?
I don't know if an official time has been given. I think it might be. I think it's Christmas. Maybe not next year, but the year after.
Yeah, they've got plenty of lead in that.
Yeah. Keeping in the kind of similar vein of horror and stuff, Ash versus the Evil Dead TV, which is the Evil Dead TV series, we've been told it'll have 2 leads along with Bruce Campbell, but it's being produced and all of that by Stars.
Yeah. Owen doesn't like Stars. I don't know that much about Stars, but
Well, basically, they've only been able to take one show beyond 3 seasons, and that was Spartacus, and that would have been plain, impossible to cancel that too early.
yep.
And Boss was cancelled after 2 seasons. Torchwood had one season where they co-did it with BBC and Stars, and after that, well, we haven't seen them since.
So basically, Stars bad. We're sorry.
Their track record is they kind of jump out too earlier than I would like.
Yeah, it's super patchy.
Yeah, I mean, Boss was phenomenal. I love Boss. I thought Boss was really great. I mean, it felt grey, are completely accurate for this in terms of if a color was associated with the actual show, but it was still very good.
So are we talking grey in terms of the moral outlook, or
The whole thing felt bleak.
that makes sense?
It was great to see Kelsey Grammer do so in such a really different role from Frasier.
So what was he actually playing there?
He was the mayor of he was the mayor of Chicago. He just found out. I can't remember the name of the disease, but it's basically dementia,
Ah,
onset early dementia, or whatever. And but he was trying to keep it under wraps.
okay, so.
But yeah, it definitely had a lot. Like he won. I think in its first season he won the Golden Globe for best actor in a drama series.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, Kelsey Grammer is a talented guy in
Yeah.
terms of his voice work and, well, basically, however many seasons they managed to take Frasier to. I think it might have been 7 more than they managed to take Boss to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It,
It had a long run.
I think it double figures. I'm not sure actually, to be honest.
But either way, hopefully Stars can kind of break form and make a good TV series out of Deadites and Evil Latin and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully.
And next up, we have Natalie Portman complaining about how the Star Wars prequels nearly nuked her career into the ground. Yep. Basically, this is back when Natalie Portman was just a young actress with not much behind her, and she decided to do a little film called Star Wars
She
Episode
was,
1.
she was still studying away there, like, didn't she?
Yep, exactly. I think she was in college. I'm not that up on Natalie
I think
Portman's personal
I
life.
think she missed the premiere because she had an exams or something like that.
That makes sense. We might fact check that later. But it was in a retrospective about Mike Nichols, who died recently. I hope his name is Mike Nichols.
Director of The Graduate.
Was it? Did he direct The Graduate? Because that makes a lot of
I
sense.
think
as to
so.
why he got a retrospective. But anyway, the point is, nobody wanted to work with her after Star Wars Episode 1. This is the power that George Lucas has to completely destroy
It's
careers.
just he had too much power, is it?
It's not power. It's a sort of a weird thing where an actor, by touching George Lucas, actually hurts themselves.
But like, as in, she said she was going to retire, is it? She was, or she
No,
nearly.
she
retired.
was. It wasn't.
Or
that
she was nearly driven out of
Yeah,
existence.
she was nearly driven out of existence. That's a great way to put it.
So, but like, you got that off that, but at the same time, you gotta remember Jake Lloyd is like, you know, he was acting away. You know, he did Jingle All the Way, you know, with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he Star Wars Episode 1, and while he still attends the conventions and all that, he's not quite the same. You know, he's not. I don't think he's acting anymore, and or acting not nearly as much, and I don't think he quite is as happy about Star Wars as he was, or as a fan originally.
Well, I think if
You know what I mean?
you've ever been on a George Lucas set, when you come out, you probably see everyone else as a sort of a green screen.
Jesus.
Yeah, they're just green screens floating everywhere. You can't even walk down the street. It's like being in a very brightly coloured matrix. But despite that, George Lucas is fantastic with special effects. He's just not very good with actors, and justifying that little piece of slander that I just dropped on the podcast. There was a story back in the day, and I wasn't around back in the day when Star Wars, the good Star Wars episodes were being filmed.
Yeah, yeah.
Where
Four to six.
Harrison Ford was quoted as saying to Lucas about his script, you can write this shit, but you can't say it.
Yeah, yeah. I think I've heard that one as well, actually. Anyway, have you heard about the new Pee-wee film? Anyway.
I've heard of it. I don't want to say anything about Pee Wee Herman because I've already committed
See,
enough slander.
I
on the
wasn't
podcast.
even like I kind of. It's one of those things like you hear it, and then you put it so far in the back of your head that you kind of forget. And I do remember hearing about it, but apparently it's moved from Universal to Netflix. So Netflix are now taking control of it.
I'm not surprised. Pee Wee Herman's career went down the drain for some reason that I will not be talking about
It's
on
Paul
this podcast.
Rubens is his name, isn't it?
Yep, Paul Rubens.
Mm.
Don't do what Paul Rubens did in a movie theater.
Yeah.
Don't do it, kids.
That's not the
It's
best.
bad.
Very bad.
Yeah. And that is basically all I have to say on Paul
Yeah,
Rubens.
yeah. I'm cool. moving on with
I
that.
have never heard anything about Pee Wee Herman. I'm guessing my parents didn't want me to have to see anything to do with that dude after what he did. Next up, in the most exciting piece of news on the podcast, if your IQ is above, or rather below, say 90, Mark Wahlberg just admitted Transformers 5 is on the way. This is your fault. Podcast land, some of you out there saw Transformers 5. It wasn't even the Americans this time. This was the lowest performing.
This is the thing. They're not doing for Transformers. Transformers aren't for Yanks anymore. But they're for. He's very much going. Bay is very much going for Asia. He's really pushing it.
That makes a lot of sense. There are
I think
a
I've
big
heard
load
it.
of robots.
Yeah. Well, it's more than that. It's a case of he doesn't. Well, let's face it. Dialogue was never really a big point in it before, and apparently it's such a minimal thing now that it's universal language.
Yeah, plus big old robots is a huge thing in Asia, and that's why Neon Genesis Evangelion and Gundam. If there's a franchise that's based on big robots beating each other up,
That's true. Yeah.
it is probably Asian. So that is all we have to say on that. But it's your fault, Podcast Land. I'm very disappointed in you. Please do not go see Transformers 5, and maybe we won't have to suffer through a Transformers 6.
We're all gonna, and someone's gonna see Transformers 4. It's gonna happen. Like, it's just too much of a merchandise thing, and it's just too like turn your brain off thing. Anyway, did you hear that Mike Coulter is Luke Cage?
I have heard that Mike Coulter is Luke Cage. I don't know anything about the character Luke Cage, so this is another
Well,
story.
basically, he's really fundamentally important for Marvel because he was probably the first like black superhero. Well, he was not the first, but he certainly was joining the trend and making it more popular. I mean,
What year did he come in?
not sure,
Because
but I do know that's a more or less a fact. But he's basically going to be portraying Luke Cage in the TV show. I think they're Netflix, to be honest. But
well, Netflix has
There's
done some good stuff.
there's
I mean,
also the this is the same way that there's the Daredevil TV show. You know, they're all, but unlike DC, they're all which have split universes. Marvel actually they're all in the same universe. So they kind of need that for like the Civil War, don't they? Really?
probably I'm not.
Because the Civil War includes a lot of people, a lot of characters.
Well, I feel like by necessity, when you take something like that's been expanded so much upon in comics, you really have to pare it down for the screen. I think they could have gotten away without Luke Cage. I feel like this is probably more.
Everyone's got an arc. Everyone has an arc. By the way, actually, there's a thought I had. You know that Joss Whedon is no longer going to be helming the Avengers, right?
Yeah, this is his last one.
Yeah, and what do you think he's going to do? Because I had a thought.
After the Avengers, I have no. He might go back to having his TV series cancelled.
Yeah, maybe. But I was thinking that this is kind of like one that I thought about it, and I don't know if I saw it anywhere else. Maybe to put it in my head. But have you heard of the Inhumans, right?
Inhumans. No,
It's
I'm
basically this is another Marvel property that they're coming out with, and it's going to be very much. Well, it kind of feels like they need that. If they had X-Men, they wouldn't have needed to do this. But basically, it's a bunch of people who they go through a mist and they gain powers. It's kind of the mutants of the Marvel of the MCU continuity. You know what I mean?
I
The
thought
Marvel
the
universe.
X-Men were the mutants. Of
Yeah,
the
but
universe.
the Marvel TV films do not have the
Yeah.
X-Men. Now they are in it as well in the comics, but the thing is that they are outsiders. They have multiple people. They have women and men and all this. I think they have women as well, and they're a team, right? So
Yep.
and they've no previous films made, not in this string of them anyway. So what I was thinking, who does that kind of stuff well? Who does teams and writes for women well and all this?
And yeah, you basically
Basically,
destroyed Joss
Whedon.
Whedon to a T.
Whedon would be surely Whedon could have a hand in that. It's a possibility. Is all I'm saying.
That does actually support what I'm kind of thinking about Marvel right now. Is that they just keep reaching into their bag of superheroes, and every time they
think-
pull out a more disappointing
I think Inhumans is going to be vital for. I think it's going to be vital in a Civil War. I think they may be the cause of the Superhuman Registration Act. I'm not sure the group that does it. I think there is a group that's responsible for a big tragedy in the comics, and I'm not sure if it's the Inhumans. I'll double check that later. But they would still need something as tragic, and so that would make sense.
They would need something as tragic, but I don't feel. I feel like you can retool it for.
Oh
for the
yeah, that's what I'm
screen.
saying. You can retool it to hell.
Yeah, in terms of just make another character cause a tragedy.
Oh, absolutely.
But I feel like Marvel they're just putting out worse and worse characters now, just to see how far the public.
Well, they'd start with their best.
Yeah, but they're just seeing how far they have to go down in the grab bag before people stop paying to go to the films.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't think they're going to stop. You're always going to get your fanboy. Aren't you watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
No, we don't talk about that.
Okay, moving on.
But yes,
Got anything else?
the rumored frontrunner to direct Aquaman is none other than Jeff Nichols.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, the guy who directed Take Shelter and Mud. Now, I've seen Take Shelter. I think Owen, you've seen Mud.
I have not, but it's on the list.
Owen is enthused about seeing Mud at some stage.
It's on some class of a list somewhere.
Yeah.
I'll watch it eventually. Don't worry.
Plus, it's got a whole bunch of Matthew McConaughey, which is always a good thing. So I'll probably be looking at that at some point. But I can vouch for Take Shelter. Take Shelter was an extremely tight psychological thriller about a guy who thinks he is going insane, hence the psychological aspect. But he could actually be having visions of a storm in the future that is going to destroy his whole community.
Cool.
So basically, what I'm wondering
When
is
did that come out?
what a couple of years ago now. It was before Mud.
Oh,
But what I'm wondering is, what on earth does that have to do with Aquaman?
I don't know.
Exactly.
Look, as long as I've no problem with Zack Snyder, but would you really want to see him doing it again, taking another film on? Doesn't he have enough in DC verse? But
I
also,
don't want to see Zack Snyder do any more films until he gets some sort of help to get back to where he was with Dawn of the Dead.
But what I was thinking is that he's I heard somewhere that I can't remember now off the top of my head that he was the preferred choice of Aquaman himself, Jason Momoa,
Yeah.
to take over. And I was thinking the moment I saw that, I was like, Jesus, does he not have enough on his plate already? But in my opinion, he would have actually been perfect for it if that was the first thing he was doing in the DC universe.
Yeah. It does give me hope though that they're pulling out an indie guy whose primary strength is getting great performances out of actors. Just because they're doing what Marvel are doing basically. In terms of letting the Russo brothers lead on Captain
Yeah,
America.
exactly. Yeah,
And that's kind of worked out for Marvel recently. So
yeah, that was brilliant. Do you have anything else?
just the one more, but we're going to stick with comic book news for this one. Batman vs Superman
Oh,
will address fan
Comic
complaints.
TV, comic films, like
Yep.
But
Yeah,
it'll address the complaints.
there won't be any comic booking on this podcast. I apologize to all of you out there who are waiting for that section. But remember that time where Superman twisted General Zod's head off?
Yeah, sure. I call it being the movie. Go on.
Yeah. A lot of people didn't like that.
Yeah, I can see why they didn't like that.
Which I cannot
You know,
understand.
Superman's not supposed to kill, etc., etc.
Bingo. But I suppose it was they were trying to go for darker and grittier, and
Yeah,
twisting some dude's head almost clean off is pretty gritty.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Not sure about realistic, but go on.
But anyway, apparently very early in the next film, or not necessarily very early in the next film, whenever
At some stage.
he's going to catch a bad guy, and the line but yeah, spoiler tags, massive spoiler tags.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't snap your neck. I'm going to take you to prison. I feel like we should have discussed spoilers a little earlier, maybe.
Maybe, but I suppose there's always time for that.
Is it heads up? We might spoil some stuff. We'll try to keep the spoilery stuff out of the edit, but
We'll try and resist the temptation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fergal, for spoiling for me, though.
Oops. I'm afraid there is no edit for real life, so I have ruined Owen for Superman versus Batman or Batman versus Superman.
Dawn of Justice. I'll get over it. I think that's it.
Yeah, I do believe we have covered every story in my notes.
And I think mine's covered as well.
That's the thing we've
Okay.
done.
Well, thanks for joining us on the Idiot's Odyssey.
My name's Fergal O'Connor.
And I'm Owen Murphy.